I don't know why. I just found it so funny. Anyway. So anytime someone says you're not doing all the protections, the only thing goes through my head. I'm just in the back of my head. I'm smiling, but I'm just thinking this is my safety. So
Liberty, did you get a chance to see our promo video?
I did.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, are you on
Great.
comms? Do you have comms working okay?
I am on comms, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Chad was looking for you earlier.
Sorry, I was
still
off
is.
for a minute. It's pretty straightforward to the point, so you can
How long
add all
is
the
it?
flavor before. 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
and what's the promo video is this is the compilation of stuff?
Yeah, we're just showing all of the shows that we did in 2023 on Business Monday.
Okay.
We
Top of
also
the second
have, for the
hour?
panelist, there is a cheat sheet that you can reference. We'll get first crack at giving our highlights before we go to questions.
And we got some fun questions today. Are we QR coding today, Alex?
Well, yeah, we already dumped them all in.
Oh, cool.
I mean, people can always add more, but we put the ones in that were already there. Some of them are from a couple days ago because, of course, it's been a couple days.
So it'd be a good idea to vote them up. Take a look at them.
Merry Christmas, Joyeux Noel, a Feliz Navidad, and greetings. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are new here and you want to learn a little bit more about what we do, head over to officehours.global. Our first hour, we answer all your questions around digital productions and media of all kinds. And our second hour is typically something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we'll be looking back at the past year of Business Monday. We've got a special montage for you. So get those memories and your questions around this past year ready. And speaking of questions, please go ahead and use Mokana to submit your questions. Remember to vote them up or down. And if not, you can always head over to askofficehours.global. And you know what, Bill? On this celebratory day, let's jump into these questions.
Absolutely. Good morning and happy holidays to everybody. First question from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Really need to get audio out of a few Mac Minis into an X32. Unfortunately, the two USB Pre-2s I'd love aren't in the budget. Is there a secondary option the panel would like to recommend?
Alexander.
Yeah, so I would suggest getting this, the Radial USB Pro 2, which is a 2-channel stereo USB DI box. And you're probably asking yourself, well, I can get a cheaper interface for less than $200. Yes, you could do that, but it won't have the same build quality, won't have that lovely transformer isolated output to prevent hum. You get a ground lift switch and you get a mono sum, which is really handy in production environments. If you haven't used Radial DIs, they're absolutely solid. So that's the way I would go, and it's got a good quality 24-bit 96 kilohertz D to A converter in it.
Alex?
That looks great. Radio has made ones in the past that were headphone jacks. It's usually when someone says radio as a DI box, I go, oh, that's not going to really work. But that one looks fantastic. So anyway, so that's a good one if you're going to stick with analog. The way I would do it, the way I've done. When I buy an X32, I get a Dante card. Like I just, like it's like an X32 with a Dante card. And then you're just putting Dante virtual sound card onto your Macs. And then you're sending them out that way to the mixer. And that's the way we do most of these. You'll have that card will be the hardware Dante source of truth for your network. So that also helps as far as moving things back and forth between the Macs and so on and so forth. But I use Dante to get back and forth between a lot of computers here, and works really well.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. While editing video to a music track, as shown in the Space Music video, it's usually best to mark events in the music in your NLE first, or is it usually best to do that, or to start with a video and edit as you go?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Two approaches. I used to do it with Avid with the multicam sync issue. If you had 3 cameras rolling in sync with a music video that you were doing, you could in post take a key and just switch it live, and it would give you a pretty good edit based on your reaction time to the 3 cameras. The easiest way, if you're like in Premiere, probably Final Cut, is just hit the marker button first on the timeline. And then you can sync to those marks all the way down the timeline to the music, and you'll probably be pretty good. For some reason, you got to kind of feel the tempo in your head, so hitting a key to the music seems to work the best.
And Alex?
So I admit that I am pretty organic about this process where I have a music video. I get all pieces in there, and I kind of edit what I want the story I want to tell. And then I put the track in, and then I start just nudging things around. I'm assuming you're not talking about a multicam, but you're just talking about making a music video. And so editing video to a music video, because I don't know what the space, wasn't able to get to the link. So so for me, I tend to just kind of nudge everything to where it feels right. And it's really, I'd love to say that it's to the beat or it's to a certain thing, but it's usually like this feels good as I watch it. It cuts when I feel like I wanted to do it, and it's not. I don't have a science to it, but I love doing it. I love cutting the music, but I do it until and literally I'll move it back and forth a frame until it hits just the way I want it to hit with the music that's there. And then if it's do I want a crossfade? Do I want it to be hard? Do I want it to do whatever? Those are all things that I think about as well.
Go ahead, Bill.
So when I was starting out, I used to cut my tracks to the beat of music, and that's fine if you're doing a Sousa march or something that is very regular. Then somebody in one of my classes in college sat down with us and went through a Frank Sinatra song, and I highly recommend you listen to a couple of his classic songs. The reason I'd say that is because when he started phrases, he hardly ever started them directly on the beat. He would do that 2 or 3 times, maybe through an entire song. But most of the time, he was either anticipating beats or lagging behind beats. And it's the point of jazz is that it's more free-flowing and more evocative and less we're trying to hit everything in time. And so I tried to adopt that in my editing. Now the way I do it in Final Cut, I actually don't use markers, Mitch. I lay down first the music track pinned to a little tiny gap clip at the front. Then I put a big gap clip through there. I put myself in blade mode, and I just listen. Very much what Alex was talking about. You just listen, and you try to get a feel for, is this part of the music moving quickly or slowly? I instinctively put cuts in, and then I just replace those cuts with pieces of the content that I'm working, and that forms my rough cut. But then I'm almost always taking those edit points and rolling them a little bit this way or that way, again, to say, am I trying to anticipate something happening, or am I trying to let something happen and then give them some new information with the cut? It's a very organic process, and this is your creative art, so don't metronomize it unless that's what you're trying to do with a march. That's my 2 cents.
I always enjoy listening to people's processes because editors, I look at them much like, like a painter and just how they look at the canvas and what they've got to work with. I'm much more along the lines of Mitchell and, putting the markers in. But that fine tuning, like once you get through the rough cut, the fine tuning is where the magic really happens. And I'm also very much an on-beat person, or whatever the emotion is. A lot of the videos we did early on were event recaps. And so what you're looking for is like really showing, if you weren't at the event, what happened, giving people really a feel for that. And that comes from like those rolling edits and making sure that you've got that, like just fine tuning it so that the music matches with what's shown on screen, but then also those subtle effects that you put in and some of the sound design that goes in to really make that video pop. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. And Vincent says, it is the next one. There you go. While watching the game yesterday's football game, no one knew what the devices were that the 2 gentlemen had on in the background. Later, I saw the parabolic mic guy, and it was much different. Any guesses?
Alex?
I think it's a receiver. I think it's a some kind of wireless receiver. I think that there's some things that look like either analog outputs or antenna outputs on the bottom there, and so I have no idea what those are. I literally have never seen that device before. Maybe Courtney will have a better idea, but they look like wireless receivers for something. That's if I was going to guess, I'd guess that's what they're doing there.
Courtney?
Yeah, I thought they could be wireless receivers. And I thought maybe for the refs, wireless microphones, but they mute them and turn them on and off of their own. And so they kind of usually manage their own. Then I thought, well, maybe maybe they're controls for the Skycam, so they have somebody down at field level to see how high it is off the ground or something. So they can fly around. But then they don't have a monitor. So then I thought, that can't be the case.
The Skycam is usually up pretty high, and there's 2 guys that run it, and they have a pretty good idea where that is. Like they see the whole field as well as that. And so I don't think and it's got its own hard deck and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's but I do think that, wireless is complicated and hard to get right. And it may be,
But why the 2 hand grips? That's what I can't figure out.
I don't know if they're hand grips. I think I was looking at that too.
They're both holding them like this,
The other guy's just kind of sitting there. I think
resting.
I think it's a default resting position. I don't think that those are, I'm not clear that those are actually grips.
I mean, if they were wireless receivers, wouldn't they be on their head to get it up above
I think it might be something that's
antennas
more convenient. I don't know. It could be keeping them out of the way. A lot of times you put things in there. I mean, obviously someone thought about it. We'll keep on doing some research. We'll try to come back to it if something pops up and someone tells us what that is. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I'm pretty sure the NFL is always looking for extra income. I think this is the new NFL Merce, which is a man purse, and I think this has to do with Taylor Swift's influence on there. I truly think this is fashion. That's all.
Next question.
Next question is coming from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada. Sorry, I messed up the name. Why do consumer or prosumer cameras display whole frame rates in their graphic user interface, even though they output fractional? I borrowed a decimator from a friend this week and verified my Lumix G7 cameras send 2997, not 30 frames per second via the clean HDMI output.
Courtney?
Well, this has been a bane of my existence for many years. That because people that design equipment in Europe or Japan didn't know about NTSC fractional frame rates, and so they said, "Well, 30 frames. Let's just put everything as 30 frames." But then when they had to release it and they had to sync up timecode, then they realized, oh, we have to make it 29.97 to synchronize with American television. And the same thing for 24. A lot of DPs early on in the prosumer that were using red cameras, just set their cameras at 24 even because they thought, hey, we'll make it just like a film camera. But that screwed all things up in post because we wanted to stay at 23.98 instead of 24. And a lot of people would just say, okay, we're going to shoot this at 24 frames, meaning 23.976. So it's been a point of confusion for many years, and they usually just round up to the nearest whole number. But you have to make the distinction when editing and using timecode if you're going to be at an integer rate with no decimals or a non-integer rate. And the non-integer rate synchronizes with most domestic television in the United States, NTSC television, and the integer rate synchronizes with most European television because they're at 25 even. So that's why there's a lot of confusion, and camera manufacturers didn't know anything about timecode, so they just said make it 30 frames. But when it came to actually delivering it, it has to deliver it at 29.97 to be compatible with American television.
Go ahead, Alex.
Years ago, I did ask a manufacturer about this, about why they didn't show that. And they said because two characters look nicer and fractional frame rates are stupid. That was like literally that was the very flat response. It's just like they don't like the fractional frame rate and it screws up their interface. And so they were just like, people will have to know about it. And he goes, and almost nobody, it's just like there's just a huge number of people that don't know or care. The people who care will figure it out. And so that was I don't know if that's the truth or anything else. I was talking to a pretty technical person, and they were just like, we don't feel like putting it in the interface. So,
Mitchell.
Yeah, the reason they do it is because not everybody knows that 30 frames should be 29.97. So they're just assuming that,
but it shouldn't.
If I mean, 30, then 29.97 is the correct, and that's what we're going to send out.
It's not always 30. I mean, 30, when you do it, I do 29.97 because I have a lot of hardware that can't handle it. But when you send it to YouTube or Facebook, it's 30. Whole 30, not 29.97. So you can run if all your equipment handles 30, you can just do 30 because if you're going out online, because 30 is 30. Like it's not like the only time it's 29.97 is when you're running through broadcast gear. That you have to worry about that. If you're going to OBS, you're going to vMix, you're going to Mimo, they don't need it to be 29.97. They'll do it, but they don't need it.
And Alexander?
Now, on that note, I'm just curious, and I don't know how well modern-day camera switchers handle this, but are there any potential issues, pitfalls that you would expect to happen in your pipeline? Say, for example, let's just say hypothetically, my cameras output a true 30 frame rates per second, but then I set my camera switcher to 29.97 or vice versa. Does that create any issues with latency being just slightly off like that?
It'll do the conversion as if it was doing any kind of frame rate conversion. Like it'll just convert it. It'll convert it from 30 to 29.97. It will, but anytime you're not gen locking, it's converting all of those things around. So it's a plus or minus a frame it's adding a frame of buffer so that it can figure out how to do that. I would definitely not mix and match frame rates on my cameras I would not mix and match frame rates with my cameras if I saw people's mouth. So like you could have a 30 frame. We've had 30 frame per second like overhead cameras because they're like some little webcam or something like that, and that's fine as long as we don't try to sync them up. But it gets much harder to sync if you start mixing and matching even just that small frame rate. And if you record it and misinterpret it, you'll lose about a second a minute. So you'll lose. I'm sorry, a frame a second. No, frame a minute. So if you have, you'll start dropping off. It's a frame a minute that you'll approximately that you'll lose there.
And Courtney?
Yeah, the problem is that if you're using time code and you're not doing drop frame, that's the other nightmare, is drop frame to keep the time consistent with real time. So if you're doing broadcast and you're doing 2997, that time code is not counting in real time unless you drop 2 frames every 10 minutes, or every 10 minutes, I think, and in the count. And it's not eliminating frames, it's just dropping them from the count. So it's much more confusing, and it was really confusing because sound mixers had to record when we were recording for 24 frame per second film, and it was going through Telecine to end up at 2997. We had to record with 30 frame time code, 30 frame even though the camera's running at 24, because they would have to pull it down 0.1% in Telecine, and so they'd have to pull the sound down the same amount in Telecine to 2997. So we had to record at 30 non-drop. So it was very confusing, and a lot of times the time code oscillator manufacturers, the time code clock manufacturers, didn't think there was such a thing as 30 drop frame or 30 non-drop. They thought it should be drop frame. We had to convince them, no, it has to be non-drop.
And Bill.
Could this be any more complicated for anybody listening to the show? Probably not. So 2 things. I wrote an long article about this once for Videomaker, and it was one of the most popular things I think I ever wrote. You never actually drop frames. When you say drop frame, worst name thing in the world, because what you're dropping is frame numbers, and you're dropping the frame numbers in order to keep your running time with 2997 time code even enough so that you don't drop time over the course of a long show. So usually it's not a factor unless you're doing something long like a documentary. You are never dropping frames, you're dropping frame numbers. And the last thing I'll say is that thankfully in the modern era, all the modern NLEs handle this pretty automatically. So it's wise to know, and if you want to do drop frame versus non-drop frame on a Google search, you can spend a lovely afternoon digging back into the whys and wherefores of it, but it's not as big a problem today as it used to be because most things will take care of themselves. Just make sure that your projects and your NLEs are set up for what you want. Drop frame or 2997 if you're going to broadcast delivery, 30 frame even for everything else having to do with the internet. You should be fine.
And Alex.
And as someone who oftentimes manages both sides, I will say do everything you can to conform everything to the same thing. So whatever it is, pick one and do it. Bill's right that you can handle some of those things, but there are all kinds of problems that come up later when you have things mixed and matched and little quirky things, and things won't export, or things don't export correctly, or sync doesn't stay in, or all these little things that you're dealing with that people deal with all the time. And you're like, as soon as you start digging into their project, you go, oh, they didn't do this one thing, or they dropped an MP4 onto their timeline, or they did this or that or everything. It's so, like thinking through this and just doing it correctly does make things run faster and easier, and so for me, I'm going to make a decision about what those frame rates are going to be. I'm going to work through those decisions. We're going to have meetings about it beforehand, and we're going to shoot it correctly so that they're all in the same frame rate. And I am going to give people trouble if they give me something other than what I asked for. Like it's not like I'm not going to go, oh, it'll be okay. It's not going to be okay. Like I have to conform it, and I'll conform everything before I put it into my NLE, into what I want it to look like. And so that and that means that you're not, I've had times where we couldn't get something out correctly. It wasn't syncing correctly. It wasn't working correctly because somebody put some trash in there, and we're at the last minute and we're pulling all-nighters because of that trash that gets thrown into NLEs. And so while they can handle it, really try to avoid it. It's something you use in an emergency. It's not something you should do as a regular workflow, because it's not going to get you while you're building the show. It's going to get you while you export it. And it's really, it's a spaghetti that's really hard to pull out. Like once you get it into the gears. So
You just brought like a flashback of a
Yeah.
phone where you're spending hours and it's like, oh, it's just that one.
and it's this
clip.
last little bit. It's this last little bit, and or something isn't syncing up correctly, or something isn't working correctly, and it was all because you know it was something that you did at the beginning that it'll be fine. And now you're at the end and you're trying to get it right, and moving this breaks something else. And it's just, it's amazing how much better things run when they are properly organized from the beginning to the end. That's all I'm going to say.
And Mitchell,
Yeah, this is a bit of a cheat, but what I usually do is do non-drop if I'm doing a 30-second commercial and make sure the commercial is not more than 29.9 seconds. When you send a 30-second spot out, Bill, what do you generally time it to?
If it's going to broadcast, I work in 29.97 because the entire broadcast industry is still based on that, except for their over-the-top OTT streams, which tend to be 30 flat. If I know it's not going to broadcast, and more things are not, probably 80 to 90% of the work I'm doing now is going to the web in some form or another, not to an actual broadcast station. So I will work in 30 frame all the time and just switch to 29.97 when I'm absolutely sure of my target, or when I'm finished those and delivered them, and now I have to do something for the broadcast world.
and Courtney.
But if you do 30, it's non-drop, and if you do for broadcast 29.97 drop frame, because that brings the timing of the time code back to actual time of the spot and or of the program. Because you have usually shoot in non-drop and you publish in drop frame 29. So
And that's
Next
where the
question.
computers can help you, because they'll do that transform for you. Most of them will do it just fine.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Mustafa Morad in Germany. Thanks, guys, for answering my previous question. I think I'll use my Wirecast Pro then to stream. I have another question about the MixPre 3.2 and the timecode split over stereo out. I enabled the split, but unfortunately I receive only the audio timecode noise. Help.
Alex.
I admit that I have had a hard time getting this to work. I have not been able to get time code split out of that stereo. And generally we I have to admit that maybe we'll have somebody else pop into it, but I just want to say that I'm only raising my hand to say I feel your pain. And it's just, Mickey says you just have to wire it up correctly, but Mickey, let us know what that wiring is, because that wiring has not been simple for me. And so I mostly just turned it off, as far as the time code output from it. It hasn't been, I'm used to using a more traditional time code output. And so it's just been one of those things that's been a little bit of point of pain for me. Go ahead, Mitchell. I'm sorry.
That's a very...
I went straight into yeah.
You get a holiday today.
Yeah, exactly.
Mitchell.
That's a very busy little connector, and I don't have one, but I just see it as not consistent with the design philosophy of most of sound devices. I keep checking my stocking downstairs, and by the way, there's no MixPre in there. And if one was going to dump in there, give me a 10, because that has more sophisticated outputs and inputs on it.
And Courtney.
yeah, when you set it up in that mode, it should be sending the time code, linear time code on one channel and your audio on the second channel. So make sure you're monitoring the correct channel. If you're getting time code on both channels, then something is summing them before it goes out to that stereo plug, or something is summing it after you pull it out of that stereo plug, or that plug isn't plugged all the way in. Make sure that 1/8 inch plug is plugged all the way into the 1/8 inch jack. Otherwise, you'll just get the time code in both ears.
Next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington comes up next. All the stockings have been hung with care, by the chimney perhaps. Now I'm looking to buy something for myself, a gizmo, an everyday carry gadget, around maybe $30 to $100 US. What thing has brought you some fun that you recommend?
John.
I would say at that budget, buy a nice bottle of booze, because putting away all this Christmas stuff is a pain.
But not an everyday, right, John? Like not an everyday. Kyle?
For me, probably multi-tools. The Gerber Shard is a cheap one, $7. or the Leatherman multi-tools. If you travel quite a bit, then ones that are TSA compliant. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm looking for more and more little lights, and I don't know why, but I really enjoy having on my belt, particularly if I'm working somewhere, a little flashlight. There's one by a company called Coast that I carry every day when I'm doing stuff in the field, and it has both a very strong white light, also a red light, which if you're working at a camera position or something like that, that little red light is fabulous because you don't bother the audience and you can still see how to find that plug that you're trying to get find the jack that you're trying to get the plug in. So I like little carry around flashlights. I think they're fun.
Alex?
Yeah, I was just building on Kyle's. I think it might be a little bit more than $100, but before I have a couple of bracelets on right now, but when I did production, I got the Tread by Leatherman, and when I travel in production, I'll wear this Tread. It is a little Leatherman. It is, by the way, TSA. It is TSA approved, although it will delay your exit from Iraq, just in case you're wondering. Anyway, so there's a lot of looking and discussion that has to happen there. But it has little screwdrivers and all kinds of stuff on it, and it's a nice looking bracelet. And the only downside is the screws you'll lose the screws over time. Over a year. They'll come out, so you have to have a couple extra screws. But the Leatherman Tread is great because it's just a bracelet. You have it on and you pull it off, and I tighten all my tripod mounts and all kinds of other things, and it turned out to be much more useful than I expected it. I got it because I buy a lot of Leatherman stuff, but I found it to be quite nice as a gadget.
Courtney?
Yeah, and I've found that if even though it is TSA approved, if the TSA guy hasn't done his Christmas shopping much, soon it's going to be not approved. You'll be without your Tread as you go through the checkpoint. I agree with Bill. I use I found a tool for my car that I put in my car that is a safety tool that's fairly heavy. It has a tire gauge, flashlight, a window breaker, and a seatbelt cutter all in one little tool, and I have it down in the side pocket. It's handy to have in case of emergency if you have to get out of your car, if you've driven it into a lake or something for some reason, and you need to get out in a hurry. Breaks the side window with a little diamond-studded point thing. You got a flashlight to find your way out through the murky waters of the lake, and you got a seatbelt cutter to cut your way out. So those are handy. And in case you need to check your tire gauge, if you have an older car that doesn't have the automatic tire monitoring, pressure monitoring in there, it comes in handy for that too. And they're about $30 to $40, something like that.
So Vincent, if you're out and just in the mood of taking some photos or creating content, this is like my go-to. Like it's an Automtech, yes, tripod, and it fits like in my purse. I literally just bent down and pulled it out of my purse, and it can go up to like 62. Right, it goes up to 62.
I have two of those. They're fabulous.
You see just the joy, and it also has a remote. I rarely use that because I just use my watch, but so it fits just compact wise. So I'm just saying it might not be like the Leatherman, and it got those but this I use.
What is that again? What is that called?
Automtech. It's the Automtech tripod. So.
That sound you hear, that little wincing sound, that's my pocket literally catching fire. It just sounds like,
yeah.
I bought two of those before
$50, $60.
I bought
and it
two
just
of those
depends
before
on the
my
height.
California trip. They were fabulous. I used them the last time I came remotely into office hours because then I had 3 stands and they go into my backpack and they're fabulous. So score one Liberty.
Yes, Alex is literally, I just heard the keys.
I'm typing.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Joshua Brunswick in Vancouver, BC. Our local church upgraded its mixer to a Presonus 32S. Anyone familiar with it? Is it any better than the X32?
Alexander?
You know, I've used these mixers. I like the Studio Live series. I want to be really careful about saying, is it better? Because the thing is, if you ask any live sound engineer, they're going to say the best mixer is the one they're currently using and that they know well. If you want to sit here and debate technical differences and technology superiority, yeah, we could talk about that too. And in many ways, because the Studio Live Series 3 mixers are a newer product, they do have better specs in many ways than the X32, which I've also used. And sound quality wise, I actually think the Studio Live Series 3 mixers sound better to my ears. Once you wrap your head around the way it works and the workflow, they don't do Dante, by the way. And I know a lot of people like to use the X32s with the Dante cards. The Studio Live Series 3 stuff for audio over IP, they use AVB networking, which is fine if you want to use their stage boxes. And again, once you figure out how to do the digital patching, it all works out in the end. So I really like those mixers. They do not have auto mix, so they may not work well for corporate spoken word gigs, but for live sound, for music, house of worship, if you're mostly doing music production, they sound fantastic, and I have no problems with them. And if you have any other questions, I'm on Discord. We're both in Vancouver. Let's talk.
Alex?
So what's the price, Alexander? What's the price on these Personuses?
Yeah, they're definitely more than the X32. I don't have the price off the top of my head. Right. I could probably find one here, but it's definitely more money.
I will say that I just don't see them very often. They're $3,400. They're fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, and I just don't see them in production very often. And I don't know whether that's a cultural thing. I saw one maybe 10 years ago, which is the last time I saw a Personus in any of the productions that I work on. And it's really, for me, it's, and so the reason I say that is because it's harder to find people to do things when I watch very much of what equipment do I see. So in the world that I'm in, the little events are all in the Behringer world, the X32 world. As soon as they go to medium events, they're all Yamaha. And then once they get big, they specialize. So Calrec and Digico and other things like that. And so, but I don't see these very often. I used to have a Personus, which I will admit that I'm not going to base the judgment on my Personus mixer on this one because it was a horrible experience. But I wouldn't buy another Personus based on the last experience I had. It was just not a great experience. But it wasn't a 32S, so it could be a very different build. So anyway,
Alexander.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one you used, Alex. Their analog mixers aren't the best, but the Studio Live Series 3 in particular, and I didn't like the previous digital mixers, but they really did a good job with Series 3 specifically. And I agree with you. I don't see a lot of these for the kind of stuff that you're doing, Alex, for these types of production stuff. You're right. You do see a lot of Behringer stuff for the smaller stuff, and then you see Digicos and other stuff, and even the Midas Heritage stuff for the live sound stuff. But I think they hit a sweet spot for a specific segment of the market, which is a lot of independent stuff.
Yeah, and the other one I see them going head to head with. I mean, when I do see it, where I would see this Personus would be an Alan Heath. So you see a lot of Alan Heaths for like little bands and stuff like that as well.
And for those of you who are watching, making sure that you are voting up your questions, the questions that you want us to address over the next half an hour, and also get your questions ready for the second hour and just reliving some of your favorite moments from Business Monday so that we can discuss, reflect, and also looking forward. Next question.
And this one, like the last one, are QR code questions this morning in the group. Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington has this one. Has anybody used Audinate's Dante Via? I didn't know what it was, and it looks like it makes any USB audio interface into Dante channels. Would you recommend using this for an XR18 as an example, or just use the USB direct? And he notes, having been an Office Hours listener, I know, it depends.
Alex?
In this case, it doesn't depend. I love Dante. I use Dante every day in every project that I do. Dante Via is a rolling dumpster fire that came straight out of hell. It just popped up. It just the wing opened up. There is no version. It does not depend. Do not use Dante Via for anything. Do not get in there. If it looks like it's working, it's just trying to fool you, and it will get you somewhere else. Dante, amazing. Dante Via, not usable. Like it does not depend. I don't know what the other part of the question is, but what else you would do, but do not consider Dante Via as a viable option for anything that you would do at home for fun and definitely not for work.
And if you didn't hear that, don't do it. Mickey says in the chat as well, he said, yes, it's garbage, unreliable, move along. Mitchell?
Yeah, as bad as that is, the good sauce is the Dante Avio, or Avio as they like to pronounce it. They have a Gazinta and Gazalta that will fit just about any situation.
But they're not really related to each other. The Dante Avios are just the outputs for Dante. But the Via, those
inputs also, not just outputs.
What I'm saying is they're just interfaces for that, but they're not part of the Dante Via network at all. So,
just
next
saying,
question.
Alternative.
Next one comes from David in London, and this is also a QR code question. I purchased the Korg D888, an 8-channel multi-track recorder, more than 10 years ago, and I've been quite fond of it. Unfortunately, it ceased powering up. Do you think it's worthwhile to invest in repairing it?
Courtney?
Probably not, because the power supply is built into that mixer as a 240-volt power supply. And that mixer is getting long tooth. I think they came out in 2008. So it's about 17 years old by now. You might want to look into something a little more modern. I think it traces its lineage back to the old 4-track mixer recorder / combos that had the built-in cassette deck or quarter-inch recorder built in. So it kind of does, multi-tracking, 8-track multi-tracking. But this one, I think it does it digital. I'd look into some of the new Behringer that all the new digital mixers that can record internally, they'll be able to record on removable modern day media like micro SD cards. So I think you'll be happier if you moved up to something new than to try and keep that old 15-year-old mixer alive, because technology has improved considerably as far as the quieter preamps and things like that in the last 15 years.
Go ahead, Alex.
I just get a new mixer. Don't go down this path. Don't try to fix old mixers. When mixers are 10 years old and they die, it's just time to buy something new, and don't try to refurbish them. The evolution is so fast that for a relatively close price or whatever, it'll cost you, as I think Courtney said, it'll cost you more to fix it than it will to get a new one. I would just get something new.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was thinking when it said 10 years old, and now that's too new, I was going to say you might double check to make sure there's not a fuse either at the back or in the, that's the first place I look when something won't power on, and sometimes they wired a fuse internal in these things, so I usually take the top off and glance, but I agree with everybody else. If it's not something crazy simple like that, move on.
And Alexander.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, if you like the format of these kind of standalone multi-track dedicated mixers / recorders, I would look at the Tascam DP24SD. It's a 24-track digital multi-track recorder, and it's currently, if you're in the US, $507 right now, and the build quality is going to be far better. It has built-in DSP, and it'll have better converters and preamps by now, for sure.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida says, how many frames are typically buffered on a USB output device? I use the Blackmagic Ultra Studio 4K Mini to output HDMI or SDI, and that usually buffers 4 to 6 frames. Is that okay? Thanks.
Alex?
Yeah, with the whole video pipeline, you'll oftentimes lose 4 to 6 frames is pretty normal for that if you're running separate and running through Blackmagic hardware. You're losing, one thing that we were measuring, you lose about a frame to a frame and a half just coming out of the camera. From the time it hits the sensor to the time it comes out the other end of the camera, we measured at about 40 milliseconds. And so you're going to start losing stuff there. And then as you do any kind of, any other conversions, you'll end up losing a little bit here and there. But 4 to 6 frames is pretty typical for a Blackmagic pipeline all the way through.
Next question.
Matthew LeConte in Oakland, California has this one. Please pontificate on preventing plosives. Mic placement, pop filters. Can we get more P's in there, please?
Alexander.
I will say this many, many times. Mic technique. So whether you're using a end address microphone like this or a side address microphone like this, don't talk. I'm not going to demonstrate this because we'll get plosives, but do not talk directly into the capsule. So the key is if you just move the microphone off to the side like I have here and turn it at an angle, the key is you want the wind from your mouth basically going across the microphone, not directly into that. That will pretty much eliminate it. Now, if you're dealing with clients and you're doing podcasts or whatever it is, and you can't rely on the people coming in having good mic technique, then it's a good idea to put a pop filter on it. What I do with my microphones here, and let me just quickly cut to this. So I use the Electro Voice RE20s and RE27s. This is an RE27 in the shot here. And now the RE microphones have really, really good internal pop protection already, but just as an extra measure of protection, I use the BSW repop filters. So that just goes on top. They're very acoustically transparent. They work really well. And that's what I use for those mics.
Go ahead, Bill.
Alexander nailed most of it. I would say, yes, technique number one. You learn quickly. When I started my voiceover career all those years ago, I was stuck in front of 40 different mics in my first 2 years, and they all had different characteristics. Mostly large diaphragm condensers are very sensitive. So while other mics like the 416 I'm on right now are not particularly plosive sensitive, my Sennheiser 416 over there is, or not 416, the Neumann TLM 103 is incredibly sensitive. So I have to have a pretty significant pop filter attached to it whenever I do work on that mic because it is incredibly sensitive. And if I'm doing some kind of narration or something like that or audiobook where I have to get very sensitive and very quiet, that mic is much better for recording those kinds of things, but it definitely needs wind protection.
Mitchell?
Well, for some folks, no amount of mic placement or pop filters are going to keep that plosive from coming through. So in a pinch, I usually advise the reader, if I'm directing them, smile through the P's. If you literally smile when you say them, you've eliminated the plosive itself, and it still comes across as a P. So there's your tip.
Go ahead, Kyle.
And I'm going to also mention practice.
Courtney?
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at pop filters, a lot of them microphones like the one that Kyle's using have the foam pop screen filter in front of it. Actually, a couple of layers of that. But I find that the type that Alexander Knight's using, which has a separate, very thin nylon mesh that has some freestanding air between the mesh and the microphone, allows that wind to be dispersed more into the open air. The foam pop filters disperse the plosives a little bit, but because it's then contained within the cells of the foam, it's not as good at removing the pop as an open, just a piece of fine mesh that doesn't interfere with the frequency response of your microphone. That's the other thing, is that the heavier foam windscreen / pop filters can attenuate a little bit of the high end around 10,000 cycles to 15,000 cycles, take it down a dB or two. So you may need to compensate with your equalization a little bit if you're using a foam type pop filter. But I like the ones that have the big round circle you see with the black nylon mesh in it, because that doesn't attenuate the high frequencies, and it dissipates that wind before it hits the microphone, because it can then go out into the free air as opposed to being contained within the closed cells of that foam.
And I see another demo coming up. Alex?
This is the pop filter or a version of that pop filter that Courtney's talking about. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Some of them mics have built in. You can buy like a Heil. Actually, Heil doesn't make it. BSW makes the pop filter for the Heil, which is kind of odd. But anyway, you getting something a little bit of a distance. Usually, you just need to make sure. Sometimes people put these pop filters on and they end up leaning against the mic. That's not going to help. It's not going to help. It's against the mic. You need it to be about an inch away from that mic to make sure that it's actually breaking some of that up. So if we can, we do this. A lot of times this is just to keep people away from the mic. It makes it less comfortable to be there. The number one rule that we have, so we prep a lot of people and we send out a lot of mics, is we just simply tell people there is a channel between, let's see if I can do this without, see that channel right there? I'll move my head into it. That channel between the outside of my eyes, just keep the mic out of there. like we're just like when we prep people, we just keep moving the mic to the side until it's not in that channel. When it's not in that channel, we don't get any pops. Like we just don't, as long as they keep talking, and now they'll have a tendency to do this, and we have to tell them not to turn into the mic. Just look at us and stay in the channel between the outside of the edges of your eyes. We just keep moving it outside of that. When it's inside of that, we get pops. When it's outside of that, we don't get pops. And just point it towards your mouth from the outside. You won't get any pops, and you don't have to do it. They don't have to think about anything else. They don't have to have any other technique. Just keep your head out of that, keep your mic out of that channel, and it all works. And it's not, there's lots of ways. Maybe you might get something different if you're a radio person and you can do whatever, but all you have to do is do that to keep the pops out of there. If you look forward and you have it to the side, it's never gonna pop.
I remember when you told me that hack, and now people, if you ever see me, where am I? Here we go, and having it all lined up.
It just fixes it. It's just and especially when you're working with non-technical folks, you don't have to tell them anything else. It's much easier just to say, just move your mic over to the side a little bit and point it, but you still want to point it right at whatever the receiver is. It's got to be pointed right at the mouth, but just to the side. And people have a bad habit of watching too many podcasts and so on and so forth, where there are people talking right into it and everything else, and they don't know how much filtering was required to get that to work, and that they have mics with big long things on the ends and so on and so forth. So. And
there's just a little discussion going on in the chat here where Mickey makes a great point. He's like, talents, mic techniques need they were just going back and forth with regards to just making sure that you check with the talent and making sure navigating and working with the talent. And Alexander said sometimes it's kind of hard working with talent and getting them to get that right. So hopefully some of these techniques will help us as we're working with non-technical talent. Mitchell?
Yeah, condenser mics are very likely to have more plosive popping than anything else. And of all the different devices that are mentioned, they've been around a long time. Like, for example, this is an old-fashioned screen that I used to put in front of my U87 before I learned to be better at not popping. And what it does, it just slows down the air as it goes through it to the microphone. This goes into a little slot in front of the U87 I have behind me. So there's lots of different techniques, but the best one is the one you do with your mouth.
And Bill?
And just a little tiny refinement. They're saying move to the side, and I 100% agree with that. You need to keep your wind outside of the mic diaphragm. But whenever I've been in a studio with a hung mic, particularly a sensitive large diaphragm condenser, if they say, can you move off your popping P's or something like that, I would imagine a conical thing around me in the mic, and rather than moving directly to the side, which can change the distance between the mic and you, if I go out here, that's a substantially larger distance. What I would do is just try to keep myself in that circular zone, and I keep exactly the same distance to the mic, which means that the level is exactly the same no matter where my mouth is placed on that arc around the mic. Just a little tiny thing that I always think of.
And Courtney.
Here's a tip. If you're running a recording studio where multiple people are going to be using that microphone, rinse out your pop filter with some alcohol every now and then, because nobody likes to approach a pop filter that smells like pastrami or beer, because it will if somebody previously has been using it, or onions. Wow.
Next question.
Came treble in Madeira, Australia. I stream cut off on YouTube yesterday at the stream cut off on YouTube yesterday at 57:29. For our learning, any idea what happened?
Alex?
This might be the show yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't know that happened. so definitely let us know. I don't know whether the stream cut off or whether the video is the video still up there. Maybe someone can let us know in the chat. But I didn't know that occurred. Definitely. So one thing to know is if you're in Discord and anything happens that you don't expect to happen during the show, there's a RFI, that's room for improvement, no, this was, and so by the way, this was not yesterday. This was Friday. It probably was Friday that it cut off because we don't normally stream on Sunday. So this is an older one that came in on Saturday, but it came in after it's a long story. So anyway, so yeah, it was, I don't know why it cut off. So we'll take a look at that and try to figure that out. I don't know if it cut out for everyone because I didn't see any in the data. I didn't see any large drop off. So I don't know if it was a whether it was a problem that you had or whether it was a problem that was across the system. But definitely put any issue that you see in the show into the RFI in Discord. It's right near the top. So take a look for that. Yeah, I don't think there was any issues yesterday or Friday.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik from Norway. So glad to see John back today, as are we all. Been missing you on the panel. Merry Christmas. He wanted to say that. I'm sure that's echoed by everybody around here today.
John?
Samuel, it's very nice. Thank you for the nice comment. Yeah, I'm having some health issues. I was in the hospital, got out late last night, and woke up early this morning and figured I'd jump on the panel and stay as long as I can. But I should be around more often than I have been.
Fantastic. It's great to have you back, John.
Yes, such a gift. That's a great gift for today, John. Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City, less than 200 subscribers away for the 5,000th subscriber giveaway, a Sony FX3 lens and A10 Mini Extreme ISO. Come on, Alex. Don't be a Grinch.
Alex?
We're less than 20 away now. It's not even less than 200. We're 20 away from 5,000. I don't have any gifts. So the gift is that we're going to keep the show going and keep on paying the bills. So anyway, for the thing, but it was an arbitrary goal that we set last year to hit 5,000, or that I mentioned, I think in this week last year, or on a Sunday or something like that, that it was, they're going to try to hit 5,000 by the end of the year. And we're 20 short. We're going to try to hit 50,000 by the end of next year, and hopefully we'll be less than 20 short there too. So anyway, so if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. It'd be great. We'd like to close that gap and try to get there, but it's not the end of the world if we don't. But it's so close now. I wouldn't even, if it was 200, I wouldn't even be talking about it. But the fact that we're 20 away, anyway.
This week, it's happening this week.
Yeah, this week.
Alexander?
Just saying, but I would love a black T-shirt that just says "never ever" on it.
But then, and on the back it should say "ever, ever, never, 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 ever."
And go fine, so it gets like to really small fine print at the end. Next question.
Asma Gajar, a friend in Cape Town, South Africa, says, fan of LG monitors, getting a Mac Studio, plan to dive into Final Cut Pro, scanning old negs and images and related photography/video edits. Looking at widescreen, anyone familiar with LG and which of their monitors you'd suggest?
Mitchell?
Yeah, LG's a excellent alternative to buying the super expensive Mac version. And I would stay away from the curved monitors. They kind of scare me a little bit for doing video editing because of the convex screen tends to distort the image a little bit. You don't want that.
Alex?
I had a really wide screen once. Yeah, so it drove me a little crazy. I will admit, I think it's you like it or you love it or you hate it on the widescreen. I don't like the widescreens because it's really hard. I'm managing a bunch of windows. I have a lot of monitors, but they're all the same. And part of it is they're all 1080p monitors so that I can all go back into my switcher and I just move parts of the interface around where I want them. And I kind of like the modal nature of that, where I'm going to have my program out over somewhere. I'm going to have my interface somewhere else. I'm going to open things up. I will admit Final Cut isn't as good at that as other things, but it is still doable for some of the windows there. And so I don't. The widescreens make me a little crazy, and so I tried them, but I did not sink in.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'm with Mitch. I avoid the curved screens because they're not standard, and even the widescreen, since they're not a standard aspect ratio. If the output of your Mac is a different aspect ratio and the screen tries to scale it to fill the screen, then things are going to be distorted horizontally or vertically. So I would stay away with that. The main problem with the curved screens is the reflections. Like Alex said, if you've got a bunch of 1080p screens, you can adjust the angles of each one of them to get reflections from lights behind you out of the screen, especially if you're going to try using them for color grading or you need to see detail on the screens. If you've got a big light reflection on it, it's very difficult to get reflections out of a convex screen because they don't behave like they do in a normal flat screen.
Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. The Scorpions will be embarking on a 60th anniversary tour in 2024-2025, while Rocklights has a major chunk of the tour rehearsal market in the U.S. Would there be an equivalent to it anywhere in Europe where bands at that level would rehearse?
Alex?
We'll do some research on that. I have no idea whether there is one. I'm sure that there's somewhere in Europe that has. And there's somewhere in Europe that is like Rocklights. There's one in Nashville. I was watching some behind the scene, and they were showing the build up in Nashville. So there's so it's not like Rocklights is the only one that you can do this with. In fact, in the old 3210, where we were, Metallica, you would rehearse their stuff there in that space. And so I think that there's different places for. By the way, if you have an office in 3210 and Metallica is rehearsing, it's loud. It's loud. Just in case you're wondering, everything shakes. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada. Other than the reported ATEM blue color issue that is currently a known issue on the Zoom 5.17 update, has anyone noticed increased latency and audio-video sync issues? I rolled back to 5.16. No issues now.
Alexander, you want to share a little bit more?
Well, I have not been able to say this for certain, but I did not make any changes to my setup until Friday morning when before I came on the show. I updated to the 5.17 update, and all of a sudden people were saying my sync was out. I ripped apart my entire system. I did all these tests. I thought, is it my HDMI matrix? Turns out it wasn't the HDMI matrix. And anyways, everything was fine in my setup, power cycled everything, and then I rolled back to 5.16, and everyone is saying now that there doesn't seem to be any issues. So I'm not sure if anyone else ran into or experienced any additional issues there with latency or sync.
Alex?
We've had some people talk about that, and then it turned out one person was seeing out of sync, another person was not seeing out of sync, and we found that restarting the computer fixed that. And so we're not sure if it's like if it was just a resource issue, but we haven't seen that regularly, on the new update. So I don't think that sync is a big issue, but it may depend. What computer are you using this on?
So my Zoom computer, my main computer is an M2 Mac Mini. The Zoom computer is an older Mac Pro with a 12-core Xeon chip, so it's not like it doesn't have processing power. It's never been a problem before, but all of a sudden I install 17 and there's issues. I would try. Well, I guess what my thing is, I would try putting Zoom on your main computer and seeing if you still see the same sync issues. I think that it's asking more from that Mac Pro than it wants to do. So I think that there may be more processing there. So I would test it on both machines and see if you have the number one. Is it predictable when it's and also restart it without any apps running on the Mac Pro. Do you see the sync issues all the time? Then put the same build onto your M2. Do you see now? Admittedly, the one thing to note about Zoom is I believe that I'm correct to say that a different version of Zoom is written for every platform. So every platform that you see there is a different build of Zoom for the Linux, for the Windows, for Mac, Intel, and Mac Silicon. So it won't be quite apples to apples, but I would take a look at that.
Next question.
Next come from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. And Bobby says, how would Apple's Final Cut, Resolve, or Premiere benefit if they had SRT?
Bill, real quick.
I'm not sure that they would that much. And bear with me. I know that it seems like it would be a really good thing to have SRT output, that secure, reliable transport thing, moving in and out of your NLE. But right now, I've been doing a lot of audio work, and they just added to Final Cut a moving timeline of very high resolution audio. And they said specifically that they couldn't do it before this because the processors just weren't powerful enough to make that a smooth experience for the editor. If they are running at that high end of utilizing processor, if you add an in and out through SRT to it, would that affect it and draw down the power of the other things you're doing? It seems to me that if you're broadcasting out of your machine and you need SRT and those kind of things, that's one use case. If you're an editor, that's another use case. And if one is going to negatively affect the other, I know Apple's process has always been, well, then don't do that. Don't mess up the experience of the core competency of the program by trying to add in something else. I may be wrong about all of this, but that's kind of what my gut tells me. They're really pushing a lot of bits through these NLAs the way they are now.
And we're getting ready to go to the top of the hour. So get your favorite moments in as we will be right back as I get this. this is
the hardest part is that you didn't have quite enough time to do the pre-sell, but not quite enough time to do anything else.
Exactly. Welcome to the second hour today. We're so excited as we get into this review of Business Monday and all the exciting guests and topics that we have had during our second hour. And this is a great opportunity for you to go ahead and submit your favorite moments. I see some questions coming in, and panel as well, for you to just thinking about those moments and those guests that that had an impact on you this year. And as a note, we'll be doing this year-end review all week long. So you want to check out the daily email to see each week, each day of what each year-end review that we have coming up. And you know what? I think this is a great time for us to roll the recap of our Business Monday 2023.
Kilo Show Production Review. Renee Ritchie, YouTube Creator Liaison. Sales. Pricing. Doc Rock of Ecamm. Tim Moore of View Technologies. Content Creation Strategies and Processes. Nikita Pope on Business Branding. AI for Business. Silicon Valley Bank Crisis. Julie Riley of StreamYard. Bren Drescher, Mindset for Success. Descript with Kevin O'Connell. Production and Training with Rob Garrett. Business of Broadcasting. Guest Preparation is a Big Deal. Michael Krasny on Skillful Interviewing. Business of Theater. Wood Turning with Cindy Drozda. WWDC Pre-Keynote Discussion. Trademark Law. Crafting Content with AI. Ryan Hinkson, Food Content Creator. Building and retaining business relationships. Create better digital project plans. Time management. AI productivity. Transforming theater with Igor Golyak. Project management tools. Production stories. Project management lessons from architecture and construction. Business communications. Speaking at events. Project management bidding strategies. Business startup hindsight. Storytelling with Ian McKay. Business structure. The future of AI in theater. Company culture. Managing meetings. Project management scope creep. Workforce management.
We did a lot this year, and just thank you to the team behind pulling all of those clips and everyone who submitted their moments for us to just go over.
And that was just Monday. We've got 5 more days to go through.
Exactly. And I see again producers going ahead, and I know it's holiday time, so slipping in those questions when you can, and just thinking of like looking when I watched this and the team sent it across last night, and I was like, we had a lot of variety on Monday, and it being the business day, it has also been like the what makes our industry work, which is why we had some mindset with Brent Drescher, and then some branding, but then also the evolution of the project management team that has come in to really share and discuss that side of it. Like I'm just, Mondays are such a joy to get through, and when I think of just even some of my favorite moments from that is like Descript is definitely one of them that comes up just because it was having a guest come in, and that was, we broke our structure a little bit by him sharing a bit, and then we answered some questions, and then we went back to him sharing another feature and then some questions. So when we really have someone who comes in and it talks about their product and their tool, and then it really helps our community, because that's why we do this, is for our community and helping us in various areas of business. So that definitely was so many highlights. So I don't want to take this moment to say all of them, but yeah, Descript was definitely one of them for me. Alex?
I think that I think the things that I enjoyed the most, I was thinking less about specific ones and more about trends, and I think that definitely bringing luminaries in and having them talk about those things, I think definitely makes a big difference. And I think that also the general roundtable discussions of us talking about things that we learned over time, like when we're talking about whether it's bidding or managing resources or doing things like that, of kind of the roundtable discussions with those. I think that a lot of those went well. The production team, I think, did a great job, or the productivity team, the business team did a great job also of walking through some great stuff. So those are I wouldn't say that those are, I don't have a specific one that jumps out as much as just thinking about, it was really great when we had a lot of these, a lot of creators, a lot of people who are in, whether it's us, the panel talking about it, or folks that are in the industry, talking about their experiences. I felt like that was some of the highlights. I think a lot of them are great, or most of them are great. But I think that those are the ones that stood out for me the most.
And to your point too of like just trends, we were on the cusp, like in the moment with the Silicon Valley Bank. So as you're saying, like just even our ability to react to what's happening in the moment, and even looking at the footage of just the AI stories, well, not stories, but the AI moments that have evolved over the years. So I like how you frame that of just overall looking at what's transpired over the year. Bill?
Well, all of what we do on Office Hours is mostly an overview of this industry of production and IP and all the rest of these things. And, in order to play in this, it's not a cheap avocation. It's not something where you can literally just do it without investing some money. So I think Alex was brilliant in terms of making the first day on Monday every week, a way to look at the business dynamics of this. How are you going to market all these things you're learning? How are you going to turn it into sustainable, whether it's a career or an avocation or just a passion for you? You're going to hear about all these devices. Some of them are incredibly expensive. I mean, it's not inexpensive to follow along with some of the things we talk about here. The justification for that is that this business has a lot of power out in the marketplace. We are seeing more and more eyeballs watching more and more content, and we're all about content creation and distribution. So to learn, to pay attention to emphasize the business skills that are required to sustain your passion that requires some expensive stuff, I think is about as on brand as we could possibly be on the show. So I'm very grateful. And I personally, even though I've been doing this for a lot of years, I've learned a lot on Mondays. And there are things that I've avoided that I shouldn't have spent money on. And there are things that I was led to where I spent money and thought, man, I got a lot of value for those hard-earned dollars that I put into it.
And then just a note too, while we're focusing right now on just some of our moments and reliving some of these memories, we're also going to take time to just look ahead and what we want to see, some of the topics we want to discuss, maybe even some forthcoming trends as well too. Alexander?
Yeah, for me, there's two that stand out. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. It's hard to pin down, but the wood turning episode was really interesting to me because I didn't know anything about wood turning. I hadn't even heard of the term, and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I was pretty captivated for that one, and also the Michael Krasny one really stands out for me. And being on that show too, and having the opportunity to ask someone that's so experienced about interviewing, getting his insights was just fascinating. He's just a really interesting person.
Yeah, Cindy did that. Like, she's now set the bar for like what all hands-on tutorials should look like. I'm constantly like pointing. I know Alex references her all the time.
Well, and it was that show. I was just like, holy smokes! And Cindy's been in our community for a long time, and she pops in here and there. And when she produced it, I really didn't realize it was still in this year that happened. But when she did it, it's just mind blowing because she's got all the cameras and all the setup and talking through all the things, and just a really, really amazing hour. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I see that it looks like they're trying to pull it up. So I want to keep, I just want to keep, oh, awesome. Yeah, because, and it shows even just the power of our community and everyone here. Like, yes, you see and hear us talking on the panel, but then we've got the Discord where people are constantly sharing and exchanging ideas, and where many of these topics that we actually come make it to Monday is because of the conversations that happen in Discord, and then just having Sydney, like we know her in the community, but then when she really just like showed us what she does, it was just outstanding. Harshid?
So I wanted to bring up a couple people here. So Doc Rock was one of them. I've joined a couple times on this channel, but just that engagement that we've had amongst different people and brands. Keely has helped us a lot with the Discord side. And so the connectivity of how you find yourself on YouTube and then you're connecting with, let's say, someone like Renee Ritchie, or just being on that show specifically. I remember asking questions about accessibility and the business side of things, right? What does it mean to connect with some of these brand oriented folks that are out there, and how does it help you at the end of the day? So my journey within that whole year, I mean, the names were coming up and I'm like, oh yeah, that one. And Nikita Pope, I think, was one that stuck out. Of course, you mentioned one about branding there in Liberty. So, there were a lot of intrigued moments that I've came about to learn from how to improve, let's say, my conversation with other folks, or to bring someone to the table to say, hey, check this out on officehours.global, and you might learn something about your YouTube channel, or you might learn something about how do you gather a community together. So for me personally, Doc Rock has always introduced me as like, hey, Hershey, what's going on? Even just to say hello, it just makes me feel more welcome to the channel, even if I'm picking up a couple different things. And of course, he's also been on MacBreak Weekly with Alex and everyone else. So again, it's a small world when you join into something like officehours.global, and you'll just never know what you find.
Yeah, and just Doc, just the experience of, I see him on talking about Ecamm and then getting to, work with him in advance to get him ready. But then when he shows up and just even in just community and how passionate he is about community. And like when you see these people that you see them online, but then you actually get a chance to work with them and they are who they say they are, that's always the cherry on top, the bonus. Bill?
Well, I just wanted to circle back to Cindy Drozda for a minute because many of you don't know that Cindy was a pre-show coordinator here and maybe still occasionally is. And so we all knew her in the context of the behind-the-scenes crew, which is amazingly talented. When she came on and did her piece I think we were all totally blown away, not just because she was so talented at it, because she obviously is, but it was an example of the power of video to instruct. Her technology is all in service 100% to letting someone understand the process that she uses to create her art. And it was so fascinating to have her break down why she placed cameras where she did, what they were showing, to be able to get super close so that you could see the fine details of her technique. It really was a master class at how to turn skill into video such that it makes a difference for the people watching. And I think we were all just kind of blown away. And so that, I think, is one of the highest uses of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier, and just answering a question, just understanding or getting an insight into people's, their process. And one of the things that she said, I think, just in the Q&A part of her session, was how long she took to prepare. And we do this, so we all know. But from the time that we spoke about her coming on, and that even this is something that she does all the time, but even her preparation for office hours, that was something that also, just stuck out to me, that level of execution, and then just the preparation that it took her to get ready for, to get ready for the community. Josh?
I just wanted to give a shout out to some of our series. I don't know what the plural is. We had a project management group that just kind of grew out of, we took a project management topic, and then some of the crew just formed around it. So every first Monday, we've been having project management series, and just an awesome group of professionals. People that have various primary disciplines, but have different aspects of attacking that topic of project management. So I thought that was really well done. The team is, I'm sure, encouraged to produce some great first Monday of the month for our 2024 project management series.
Alex?
Yeah, and I would say that really having that series of what kind of working through the different things that you just have to know. You have to get done. Like there's a lot of things we don't think about, and when we're starting off, we don't think about it. And having that project management crew, putting something together where we're kind of methodically moving through those things one at a time, I thought, really made a huge difference. And they're really good sessions as far as, there's a lot of things that I learned out of those. So definitely, a lot of great stuff there.
And then just pulling in some comments from the community. Brandon says, big props to the crew that made that. So, of course, the recap. And again, we were watching these videos, these year in review videos for the rest of the week on each of our specified days. And then Craig says there were so many gems in the list, especially the expert guests. All right, so let's dive into these questions.
First one comes from Samuel Nordvik in Norway, and he wonders, show 1082, Renee Ritchie, YouTube Creator Liaison, was an interesting and useful hour.
Harshid?
Yes. I definitely want to say useful. Go ahead.
That was in program.
Sorry about that. So what I was going to say is definitely was a resourceful gem for me. I passed this video along to a lot of people.
Graphic Plane?
Hey, guys, you're talking into the show.
Go ahead, Hershey.
We're just going to keep talking. We're not going to go back.
Sure.
We're not going to queue up YouTube stuff. We'll let that go. So we'll just go ahead and go ahead, Harshid.
Sure. So what I like to use this video for is the connectivity with how Renee's become now the YouTube liaison as well. And just to have the questionability of what brought accessibility into the focus group, right? So having that first conversation, then to have that July accessibility session, it all connected so much more better. And to have that conversation with Renee personally, that he is part of that liaison group, it made, I think, those questions that we have all had that we wanted to ask made it easier, and having just a Mukana system to have was that additional way of communication. So it really, I think, involved the whole community as trying to improve your product as far as how would you approach a video? Would you end the video early? Would you have, the different measures that you would take? So there's a lot of learning that could be had in that video specifically. So I really, really enjoyed this, and I peddled this around to all my friends.
Yeah, I'm so with you there, Harshid, because it felt like Renee came and gave us the cheat code, like for all things YouTube. As he was, there were rumblings around shorts, and it was at the top of the year. I think that was one of our first. I think Renee was in January. So for them to be talking about the monetization of shorts and that happening in February, like that just helped us and our community just getting ready for that. So those are the things just personally that just get me excited when we are producing for Mondays, is just bringing these resources to office hours to help give us a competitive edge just in the landscape. So yes, I'm with you. The Rene Ritchie, and a lot of his gems still stand today. So like even going into 2024, there was just so much value that he shared with us. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Samuel Nordvik in Norway. He says, show 1056, Tim Moore of View Technologies, was interesting and one of the top ones on my list.
Alex?
Yeah, the View Technologies is really, really interesting. The fact that he built them, like he figured out how to build them from scratch instead of just buying them off the shelf, was kind of mind-blowing. And so, we did learn a lot about how that process worked, and I thought that was an exceptional show, and we hope to do more with Tim in the future.
Harshid?
Thank you, Sam, for bringing this one up too. It's right in my backyard, almost hop skipping away to Orlando, and to that whole focus of he's a marketer from what he learned, and then this is his business now. So again, we've learned a lot during the year, and Business Mondays are definitely the way to go.
And just James in the comments here says, I had the opportunity to work at View Studio here in Vegas on a Super Bowl project. The facilities are just amazing and spectacular. So we're also hearing it from within the community as well. And as a reminder for our producers, going ahead and submitting your questions, and if not questions, what would you like to see coming in the new year, some of the topics that you would like to discuss. And I would like to toss that out to the panel as well for us to really think about that. I think I hear you there, Alex.
Yeah. I mean, I think that as we look forward, one of the things that we're thinking about across the board, and we'll talk about this a little bit, and we don't have them all defined for everything yet, but is the idea that we're looking at different verticals inside the verticals. So what are we doing with, we have the 4 different things. So when you watch our shows, one thing to know is that we're trying to match a format. So I think a lot of folks that watch, it's some random thing that we're talking about in the second hour, but to us, there's actually a format. So the format is that you have a luminary, and then we usually have a basic, and then we have a vendor come on, and then we have a subject. The subject's a more advanced version of whatever the basic was. All of the subjects, and so on Monday, Monday's business, Tuesday is video or graphics, Wednesday is audio, Thursday is video, Friday is logistics, and so across those 5. There are then these, we spin those out, and then we offset them so you don't see all the luminaries at one time or all basics on one week or whatever. It also means that every other one we're leaning more on the panel and less, and every other one we're leaning less on the panel, for those hours, or it gives the panel an opportunity to ask the questions instead of answer them. So those are the formats there. One of the things that we're starting to kind of think about is an overarching pattern of what areas do we want to cover within that, for each one of those, the luminaries and the basics and so on and so forth. And so for instance, with business, it might be, talking about being a creator, talking about running your business, talking about, like we're trying to think through those things. And so we're really kind of looking at that. I do think we're going to lean pretty heavily into, bringing creators on of all kinds. I think that that's one of the strongest places that we've had with our process is bringing creators in. And so with Liberty's approval, and as we go through it, we'll probably look at bringing a lot, because I think that those are some really great sessions of just hearing people from the trenches, whether they're YouTube creators or Instagram creators or photographers or filmmakers or, like lots of different, verticals, what their experience is. I'd like to, I'm hoping to lean really into those things, as we move forward. So I think that, I'm looking at folks that we can reach out to, for that, because I think that, and I think that even includes bands, get bands to come in and play for us and then talk about the music industry, like that's another, like what their experience is in that, in that process. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that in one of our meetings of just really bringing in more creators and, or as you say, people in the trenches. So much has changed in this year that I think that's important, because these folks are literally having to either change their processes or their business models on the fly to adjust to the AI, to what's happening with the various platforms. So I think that will definitely be a great benefit to the office hours.
And I think
community.
I think it's going to accelerate. Like we're just going to see. We're about to go. Usually, this year, most people think we'll have a lot of turmoil in it. And so with turmoil comes a lot of opportunity. So, I'm usually looking forward to turmoil. Usually that means that there's an opportunity to make movement. So in the obviously in the creative industry, social networks are kind of a lot of them are in some version of disarray. I think that YouTube remains particularly stable, but a lot of the other ones, no one, people don't want to be there, but they don't know where else they want to go. So they can't. They're like, so there's like people who are angry at X, but they know that Mastodon and Blue Sky are probably not the answers that they want. And then they're frustrated with Facebook, but where else are you going to go? So I think that those are. So we're going to see. So that creates a kind of an opening, but no one knows what's going to fill it. I think that the movie industry is going through its own issue where the strikes did far more damage than everyone expected. Everyone thought that things were going to go back to normal, and there's this huge nothing's happening. It's just not restarting as fast as everyone thought it would. 2024 already looks like it's going to be a little bit of a dumpster fire for the theatrical release business. In the movie business, while things get pushed to 2025, but everyone's having kind of an existential crisis over what to do for movies, and so I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think that we're also going to see, this is a real, hard match between all the streamers trying to figure out what business model is actually going to work, for streaming. And so in our time, for us as creators, and the one thing we should pay attention to in what we do here live is everyone's paying attention to live. Like everyone is trying to figure out, because they're like, that's the one thing that has a lot of dwell time. It has a lot of, lots of things. It's easier to advertise, more long form. And so there's a lot of attention on it. So those are some of the trends that we're kind of seeing that we're definitely going to be paying attention to, as we go into the new year.
Bill?
I know this is the day when most people are at families around Christmas trees, many of you at least, probably with the kids. And so we probably have fewer people watching today. But I just wanted to say to particularly all the producers through the course of the whole year who have added so many fabulous questions. When Alex first mentioned to me that was going to be the format of the show, it was going to be driven by questions, I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's sustainable over the course of the time. And he proved to be exactly correct. It has been sustainable. And I know every Thursday when I tend to host the show, I'm always worried. Is this going to be one of those days when we get 5 questions and then we have to, basically paddle? It's never been like that. And the beginning of the show always kind of sparks something in the audience. All of you producers have been just fantastic. And there's so many people I would like to thank by name, but it's not appropriate to do that because I will forget somebody, and that's not right. But I just wanted to say you really do drive this. And Alex constructed it, but you are the heart and soul of this. So thank you all for turning in whenever you have. Thank you for participating, for asking questions, and for making it a joy to get up at this crazy early hour. My wife laughs at me. She said, I didn't think there was ever anything in your life that would get you up at 4:30 in the morning every day. And I'm kind of freaking her out by doing that, but I've enjoyed it. It's just this great sense of community, and you're all driving that, so thanks.
Yes, thank you. The gift that produces, the gift that keeps on giving. Alexander.
Wait a second. Before I don't say it, and the crew. I mean, everybody on the screen kind of gets known and seen, but you have no idea the depth and talent of the people behind the scenes on this. If you could sit and watch over our shoulders in the meetings that we have, the Zooms that happen outside of this Zoom, it's an astonishing array of people. An astonishing array of talents who allow us to do this every day. So everybody who's in the back end working today and who has worked all year long, wow. You guys are men, women, everybody. You've just been incredible.
I felt like we should have had some eggnog or something right there where you were sharing that. Alexander.
You know, we've covered so much ground over the years with, various technical, highly technical, in-depth conversations on everything related to audio and video production for the type of stuff that we do. We've had so many amazing guests on. But one thing that I haven't seen, which I think would be interesting, something at least that I would be wanting to watch, is interviews with people in the industry live in the environment that they're working in, which would be really cool. It'd be kind of cool to see some front of house engineers at shows live. And I know this requires resources, camera crews, and that sort of stuff. But having some live events from people that are in the trenches, actually doing stuff, showing people, well, this is why we do things and this is why we use this certain gear. I think that'd be really fascinating.
I really agree. I think trying to fit it into our schedule would be hard, but I just want to say that I definitely agree that, getting people, it's something that we've talked about for decades, literally, is the hard part is you kind of have to own the production. So one of the things we're thinking about in that to what you're talking about is, we were about to do this with 3210 and then it closed and then we're talking to other people about it. But the idea is that, and you saw a little bit of that when we had like Marcia or Nate doing an edit, and then after the show would come back and talk about what that looked like and what it took to do it. But our goal is to get closer to that, as we go into this year, where we have events that we own, whether it's hey, we're going to bring a band into a studio and we're going to record it and do the stream and everything else and show you what we're doing. But it's going to be really for us, and it's going to be this multi-layered thing where you can watch the concert, but you could also watch someone working on the board or, other bits and pieces, listen to the comms of what we're cutting, those kinds of things. And so we know that is some rich material, like we know that that's there, and it's just been a resource process of getting it all, kind of figured out. But I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and you know what? You just made me think of, Alexander, too. I don't know that we've done too many like business type of labs, so that might be something interesting to experiment with. Whether that be having someone accounting some things that we might not necessarily stream live to YouTube, but then just in the community having someone to workshop. That might be something interesting to experiment with. And Josh.
Yeah, we're just talking about the different types of shows that we have. Some of them feature people that are external guests. Those are our vendors and our luminaries that Alex was talking about. And the other ones are things that, maybe that lab idea, that's something that we're doing internally. It's, different formats of shows where the panelists really step up. We do try to keep it, alternating such that we keep the panelists in the loop for as often as we can, and then take a step, the spotlight kind of goes to a vendor or a luminary. And we've had many memorable luminaries and a few vendors as well, where, we kind of know where that show looks like. We kind of know with those shows that we're either focusing on a particular product with a vendor, or we're talking about the luminaries we tend to be more business topics or more marketing as we've done in the past. But there's a lot more room for growth, I think, in some of the things that we do with sort of lab or workshop type events where we can move those. We have the project management series and things like that. Maybe another series that our community thinks that we should spend more time on.
And at any point in time, you can always share your ideas and your thoughts in Discord. But as this is for those celebrating a holiday, we are going to give you back your time and be with your family and friends and hang out in after hours or Discord as well. So I just want to thank you, producers, for submitting your questions and your comments and your reflections. Now, remember, we'll be doing this all week. So tomorrow we've got our year-end review for graphics. Wednesday will be year-end review for audio. Thursday, year-end review for video. Friday, year-end review for infrastructure. So go ahead, enjoy, come back tomorrow for another great second hour. And just a reminder, at any point in time, you can also submit your questions at askofficehours.global. Today, the Talk Traversal, we hit 58,699 miles. That's 94,467 kilometers. That's more than 464 million bananas for scale. We go very, very far. So again, thank you so much, producers panel, for being here, for spending some time with us. Production backend team, thank you, for without which this would not be possible. And again, season's greetings to you all. Enjoy, and we'll see you later. Bye.
I made so many Santa cards. Like here's Santa in comms. Santa's calling a show right now.
That is
Mid-Journey
awesome.
has been burning up. Love it.
This is Santa. I feel like this is really Santa after the next day. This is Christmas Day. Like he's been traveling all over. He's kind of then you have Santa. I don't think he knows how to use that mic. That's all I'm saying. I don't even know what's going on there. Then I thought this was pretty good, pretty epic Santa up in the sky, and there's Santa, meditating.
Zen Santa.
Because he is global. He is international.
Exactly. See, there's
so.
another one where he's kind of just doing his thing, and there's one there. Anyway, so those are some of the